A lot of people have crowned the New York Jets as one of the most talented rosters in football, and after a disastrous season last year, things are bound to be better this time around when you get Aaron Rodgers back, you bulk up on the offensive line, and add some other pieces in other places. But just because this team is one of the more talented ones in football, I wouldn't disagree heavily if you said that this was a top 5 roster in all of football. Talent doesn't always translate to wins and success. There are other factors, and it's never that simple. There are still questions to be had about this Jets team. There are still many things to be uncertain about, and I know a lot of people would rank this as a top 10, top 8, even higher roster and team overall going into 2024, but I am ranking them here at number 12, and there are some serious concerns I do have for this team, mainly at some of the more important positions on an NFL roster. So these are things we're going to be getting into very early on, but the New York Jets are going to be the number 12 team going into 2024. This is a team that I'm ranking closer to their floor rather than their ceiling. I guess I am not as much of a believer in the Jets this season, but there's going to be a lot of things to talk about. This defense has a lot of talented players, and let's get into every reason why I have the Jets maybe a little bit lower than you may have them. So I can start off by saying that when it comes to the coaching and the team and everything going into next year, I don't have as many questions about the defense at all. I think this is going to be one of the better defenses in the league, probably pushing that top 5 and beyond. This just does have an argument to be the best defense in the league next season, and I don't think the coaching is going to hold them back on that side of the football. So the defense, Robert Saleh, that's what he does, and I think this team has the coaching in place to put together that great defense. They've done it before, and I think, with an even more talented roster this year, they could do it again. It's just everything else is where I'm concerned. When we start with the coaching staff, I guess, I have them here all the way at 30th in the league, and when you take away the defensive stuff, I look at the offensive side of the football and I say, man, Hackett was bad last year, and Nathaniel Hackett was bad in Denver, and I did bring this up, and I feel like it's kind of interesting that we have this trifecta, 3 videos in a row that all have these Aaron Rodgers ties. I didn't really plan the list out like this. It just this is how it came to be, with the Cowboys, the Packers, and now the Jets being where Aaron Rodgers currently is. And I talked about this when I ranted about McCarthy, and there are other coaches that have kind of leached off of Aaron Rodgers and his success, and Hackett is just the next one where he's not a good offensive coordinator, and he's just there because Aaron Rodgers likes him and Aaron Rodgers wants him. That's his handpicked guy, and that's going to be the guy who just lets Rodgers do what he wants to do and runs the offense that he wants him to run. So when you took Aaron Rodgers out of the picture, obviously things were terrible last season, and Zach Wilson was the biggest contributing factor. Though I'm not going to just give Hackett a pass for last season. I've seen him the year before in Denver. He was awful there too, and I know that's as an overall head coach, but his offense wasn't well run there either. And there were ideas that he went to Denver because they were assuming they were getting Aaron Rodgers. They didn't, and he stunk it up. And then he goes to the Jets, and he's planning on having Aaron Rodgers, and he didn't, and he stunk. And it's just man, he can't do anything without Aaron Rodgers. So everything when it comes to Hackett is completely dependent on Aaron Rodgers being the quarterback. And when I'm grading him as an overall offensive coordinator outside of that, how can I not say he's maybe the worst offensive coordinator in the league? He's not a good coordinator. He's just not good at being on the offensive side of the football when it comes to this position of power, and he's just there because he's Aaron Rodgers' guy right now. That's not the only issue I have with this coaching staff. We have given Robert Saleh a pass, especially for last season because things didn't go how they were supposed to. But Saleh has a lot to prove, and arguably has the most to prove of any head coach in the league this year. This is it for him. I don't care if Rodgers gets hurt week 1 again. I don't care. Robert Saleh needs to do something this season. He has not really done a whole lot since becoming the Jets head coach, and they've kind of push things back. Zach Wilson was the issue, and this was the issue, and now Aaron Rodgers hurt was the issue. And yeah, some of these are valid excuses, but you can't just keep stringing him along. 4 wins, 7 wins, now 7 wins last year. Yeah, he runs a good defense, but you need to do more than just be a good defensive guy. And we've seen this with other coaches that have kind of held their team back in one way or another because they're just defensive coordinators that are head coaches in positions that they probably shouldn't be, whether that is a Dennis Allen, a guy I like in Todd Bowles, or, other guys that we've talked about. We have Eberflus, who I talked about with the Bears, who has a lot to prove next year. It's a lot of defensive guys that are just coordinators who got the head coaching job. Can you be a D'Amico Ryans who elevates the team and is a good leader? Can you be a Dan Campbell who's got the culture? I don't think he can be, because that's, a lot to ask. But can he at least be a guy maybe more middle of the pack or lower? Can you be a Sean McDermott at least? Can you be something for this team aside from just a defensive coordinator? He needs to prove that he is a great head coach, or at least a head coach that can take you to where you want to be. A lot of people have questions about Robert Saleh, and I'm ranking him 24th just to be maybe a little generous. Maybe 24th is generous, but I still think he's a good defensive mind, and I'm at least giving him a little bit of benefit of the doubt for what he's had to deal with Zach Wilson. Having Zach Wilson as your quarterback isn't just having a bad quarterback, that's having among the worst quarterbacks you could potentially have. I mean, there are so many statistics and graphs and everything you can look at. There are whole threads made on social media and everything about how bad the Jets QB play has been over the past couple of years. So I'll at least say, you get a little benefit of the doubt, but the excuses are over this year. I don't care who the situation is. I don't care if they eventually have to turn to Tyrod Taylor. Zach Wilson's not on the roster. Do not blame Zach Wilson anymore. We know he's bad. We know he was a bust. But you got to prove something. You got to do something this season. I have major questions about this coaching staff, and that's going to be a big contributing factor to why I kept this team out of the top 10. Among the teams ahead of them, for the most part, I am a lot more confident in all of their coaching staffs. And, even if I'm not a big fan of some of the coaches that we'll eventually get into the top 10, I'm at least, we know what they are. I know what to expect. I've seen them get to a certain place, whether it be, to the playoffs, so they can win certain games. They can bring you to a Super Bowl. I've seen all these coaches do whatever it is that they can do to get their team to the next level. Saleh has done nothing. And he's got so much to prove. This isn't like a rookie head coach that, we're giving him the benefit of the doubt because, he's a rookie and we have high expectations for him. This is year 4. Head coaches typically in the NFL get 3 years to prove it or they go. The leash for coaches in the NFL in the modern day is short, and you get 2 to 3 years. And a lot of statistics will say if you don't have a winning record in your first 3 years as a head coach, you're likely not going to be a good head coach. There are a couple outliers, and again, Saleh is a different case, but this is a big year. He's got to prove it. So that's going to be the maybe biggest reason why this team is going to rank low. I'm not sold on their coaching staff, and I think Hackett is truly an awful offensive coordinator. My main concern with this Jets team may be the coaching staff, but it's not going to get a whole lot better when we get to the quarterback situation because, yes, Aaron Rodgers is back and we hope healthy, and for at least starters with Aaron Rodgers, let's push aside all the off-field stuff, and regardless of what you think of him and what he has said and everything, I want to keep this more so strictly on the football side of things. But I will say it is a little concerning that he'll sit here and say, let's keep the distractions to a minimum. Let's keep the football stuff, and keep the off-field stuff separate. And then he goes and he's being more of a distraction than anybody else on the team, aside from maybe Hassan Reddick, who's had his own issues off the field, when it comes to showing up for the Jets training camp and everything. This has been a pretty loud team in the offseason when it comes to distractions. So that's a concern in itself, but, sticking to the on-the-field things, Aaron Rodgers is coming off a torn Achilles, and we don't have a lot of historical things to reference when it comes to how Achilles injuries affect the quarterback position. There have not been many. So it was pretty rare to see not only Aaron Rodgers, but also Kirk Cousins go down with Achilles tears last season. You don't see significant starting quarterbacks go down with Achilles injuries. So we don't know how it's going to hamper the quarterback position as much as it maybe would a wide receiver or running back, a position that requires its foot movement and its running and everything a lot more. So It was hard for me to rank Rodgers. I don't think, based on the last time we seen him play, he was playing at a top 10 level, though you can say, yeah, he was mentally checked out of Green Bay. I think that's a little valid to say, but also, ultimately, what you produce on the field, that's what we're going to grade you off of. For now, I'm sticking him here at 13th because I am at least optimistic that even if his mobility is slightly hampered by that Achilles injury and he's not going to be able to extend plays as much as he could in, his younger days, he's still a really accurate thrower of the football. He's still Aaron Rodgers. He still has a great arm. Anything with his arm, I'm not concerned about. Everything that I am concerned about with Aaron Rodgers is his feet, his legs, his mobility. Can he extend the plays? Can he make the plays that he used to be able to make, or at least make a fraction of them? And then also his mental and his processing. I think, we've seen Aaron Rodgers for many years now. He doesn't throw a lot of interceptions, obviously, but over the past few years, it's been a little obnoxious with how Aaron Rodgers just doesn't want to test anything or doesn't want to even make a semi-risky throw. How many times have you seen on like a 3rd down and 5, hey, if you throw that, in route, you can fit it in there, and Aaron Rodgers is one of the few guys who can fit it in there. Hey, maybe he could get picked off, but maybe if you get it in there, that's a 1st down. And then he just doesn't do it. And then he'll just check it down, and, maybe he'll get the 1st down. Maybe he won't get the 1st down. There's too many times where he's throwing the football away. He's very quick to just bail on certain plays if he doesn't like it. And you could just say, hey, that's Aaron Rodgers processing. That's what he wants to do. And, he's been very efficient at it. But as he's gotten older, yes, he throws less and less interceptions, but he also, I feel like, tests his arm and test some of these plays down the field less and less. And that's going to be concerning, especially for a guy that's getting older, coming off a major injury. And is he going to be even more conservative? How much more conservative can Aaron Rodgers be, especially when you have the weaponry that he's going to have? Because yes, he's going to see Breece Hall get a lot of checkdowns. Like, Breece Hall is probably going to get a nuts amount of catches. But you got a guy like Garrett Wilson who you can test a little bit. You can go down the field with Garrett Wilson if you want to. Mike Williams is a deep threat. You can do that. So I need him to test down the field more. I need him to take more shots. Yes, I don't care if Aaron Rodgers interceptions next year, instead of throwing 5, he throws like 9. I just want to see Rodgers push the ball downfield a little bit more next season, rather than what he had done in his final couple of seasons in Green Bay, where it just felt like he was getting more and more passive. Like, he has still among the best arms in the league to where he can make some of these crazy throws, and we just need to see him actually do it and not, prioritize just protecting the football above all else. But it's Aaron Rodgers. He's going to do things his way. I mean, he basically is the offensive coordinator with how Nathaniel Hackett's, out there basically doing a whole bunch of nothing. He's going to do things his way. He's going to lead in his odd ways. He's going to manage the game in his interesting ways. He may not be the most exciting quarterback to watch next season. He may not be as, daring and exciting as he was maybe 7 years ago, but I don't know what to expect this season, just because he's coming off an Achilles injury, and I don't know what that's going to look like. And a lot of what Aaron Rodgers was great at was his off-platform throws, was the throws that he could make off his back foot and off the side and leaning. But can he even get to the point where he's moving out of the pocket to make some of those throws? Or is he just going to be 100% locked in the pocket, stand strong in there, and just become a complete statue in there? Maybe I get proven wrong and Aaron Rodgers comes out, he pushes the ball downfield, he looks rejuvenated, he, looks like a quarterback that he was 4 or 5 years ago, or even just, when he was winning back-to-back MVPs, and he looks like that, and he goes and he just dominates and he gets back into the top 10 level. But I think there's every reason to have some pause and some concern that might not be what you're getting, and you're getting a bit more of a shell of what Aaron Rodgers was once upon a time and what he was in his final year in Green Bay and what he, was potentially going to show last season. And, you're getting less mobility, you're getting less playmaking, you're getting more conservative, and you might get a guy who throws 24 touchdowns, 4 or 5 picks, and, he's just managing the game well, which I know Jets fans are going to just sit there and say, we'll take that. That's better than Zach Wilson. Yes, that is better than Zach Wilson, but literally anything's better than Zach Wilson. I mean, you go and you picked up Tyrod Taylor at least, so I think that's at least worth a mention, one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league. And I mean, just Tyrod Taylor is better than Zach Wilson. So, I know Jets fans are going to be sitting there like, yeah, we'll take that. And you certainly will, but just be concerned and be a little cautious with what Aaron Rodgers you're getting, not just off the field, but on the field as well. Majority of the concerns going to come from a questionable coaching staff and a quarterback situation that you don't know what you're getting from a guy who just previously was injured last season. But the rest of this roster, I have a lot of great things to say about. And let's start with Breece Hall, who is just an awesome player who has been stuck behind just a trash offensive line, but now that has gotten a lot better this season. He was a guy who ran for just under 1,000 yards last year, but also had 76 catches because Zach Wilson couldn't do much more than just check it down for a couple of yards. And, when Aaron Rodgers coming in, expect Breece Hall to have another 60, 70 catches potentially, even with the additions at the receiving room. Breece Hall is just an amazing player, a home run hitter, and a guy who, if you just give him a little bit of daylight, he can get those chunk carries in bunches. So I know if you look at the baseline statistics, you're not going to look at him and say, well, that's a top 5 running back, but we know how good Breece Hall is. He was going to run away with the Rookie of the Year if he didn't get injured in his rookie season. And then going into this upcoming season now in 2024, I anticipate him clearing that 1,000 yard mark. Even with the awful offensive line that he had, he still averaged over 4.5 yards a carry, and that's coming down from the 5.8 he had as a rookie in 7 games. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of meet in the middle there with a decent offensive line and a bit more of a threat in the passing game, and he kind of goes for 1,100 yards, 5 yards a carry, gets those touchdown numbers up, and he catches a whole lot of footballs. This could be a guy that, just fantasy football-wise, you're targeting pretty heavily because he's got touchdown potential, because he had 9 last year combined with a bad offense, and 76 catches. Like I said, I think the catches are going to maybe go down a little bit, but not too much. And he's going to be running behind a lot better of a team that's going to be able to help him succeed. This is a team that was basically relying on just Breece Hall to be the entire offense because, yeah, you had Garrett Wilson, but you didn't have a guy who can get him the football. So it was just, hey, Breece Hall, pray he could save us. And there were times where he made some crazy plays that he shouldn't have made. So now that he's in a situation that is way more conducive to him being able to succeed, the line, the quarterback, the threat of the defense, not having to just stack the box and only have to worry about him, he's going to be allowed to succeed a whole lot more, and he's already succeeding at a highly efficient level. And I just have no doubts in my mind that Breece Hall is going to probably go pretty nuts this season. He's still just 23 years old as well, so I mean, there's still even more room to grow. I absolutely loved Breece Hall coming out of the draft. So, he's going to be great. And I know the backup situation isn't really all that exciting. I think the guy you're maybe most intrigued about is a Braylon Allen. But Braylon Allen does concern me because I do think he is the archetype of player that they really did need. A back who you can give the football to, just in between the tackles, just have him kind of power things, grind the clock, grind out some, tough yards. But the big problem with a guy like Braylon Allen is major fumbling issues. So I do find it curious that a team who is trying to maybe contend this season and wants a back who they can maybe give a couple of carries to grind out some clock, grind out those tough yardage, has fumbling issues. So if he can clean up his fumbling problems, then he'll see the field a decent amount. And, maybe in key situations, you'll see him a lot in the fourth quarter when the defense is maybe a little bit more worn down. I think Braylon Allen can really succeed there. But if he doesn't, fix his fumbling problems, you might not be seeing much of any of him this season. I think they'll kind of sprinkle him in early on in the year, kind of see what they're getting. And then, depending on how that trust grows, will determine how much he gets the football going into the later half of the season. But other than that in the backfield, I mean, not really much. Izzy Abandakanda is going to be coming back, and he was a pretty fun player as a rookie last year, but he didn't really see the field all that much. So it's really just Breece Hall, and Breece Hall does a lot of the heavy lifting for this backfield. Just having a top 5 running back is going to put you, top 10 minimum, but, the depth and the other guys that they are going to be counting on do leave this a little bit lower. It's going to come in as the 8th ranked backfield in the NFL, so it's really good to have a guy like Breece Hall, though, and Aaron Rodgers is going to absolutely love him, and having maybe the best running back that he's played with probably ever. I mean, Aaron Jones is pretty good, but I think Breece Hall right now is better than Aaron Jones ever was. I do think one area of this Jets team that has been massively overrated is this group of weapons. I have it coming in as just a C+ grade. It's a fine group of weapons, but I don't know where the sudden hype for this weaponry group is coming from, because a lot of people are saying this is a great room. And I don't really see it. I get that they added Mike Williams and they added Malachi Corley, and I like Malachi Corley, but what I do think is being a little misunderstood is the Mike Williams that you're getting. You're not getting the guy in 2021 that put up 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. I don't think you're getting that. And yes, I think Mike Williams for this team can be a really effective deep threat. And what I will say about this team is I do think they have a lot of complementary skill sets, where Mike Williams can be the vertical guy, Corley can be the short guy, and Garrett Wilson can work all the levels. You have, Breece Hall out of the backfield. I think they have some, skill sets, but I think this team obviously is lacking a tight end. Tyler Conklin is just a fine player, and this is also a team lacking depth at the receiver position, to where while Malachi Corley is going to be a weapon for this team, he's not a true wide receiver. He's more just a gadget guy, which I do like him, and I do think he can play maybe a bit of the Randall Cobb role that Aaron Rodgers has liked. A receiver who, like Randall Cobb, has kind of lined up in the backfield numerous times in his time in Green Bay, and they weren't afraid to just throw back there, return kicks, put him in the backfield. They, throw him a swing pass. I think they'll do that with Corley, which will be nice, but I don't think he's the receiver that Randall Cobb was. So you're going to need another solidified guy, especially, in the case of a Mike Williams injury. Mike Williams is also a guy who, coming off a significant injury, is turning 30 this season. And, compared to 2021 to 2022, had dropped off in play. And then in 2023, like I said, got a significant injury. So I can't really rank him all that high as a receiver. I can't really say he's anything other than just, at this point, maybe just a nice number 2 deep threat. I mean, I have no questions about Garrett Wilson, though. Garrett Wilson is a certified great receiver, a top 15 guy. He still managed to go over 1,000 yards last year. He had only 3 touchdowns, but this is a dude who, with Zach Wilson, has managed to have 1,000 yards in back-to-back seasons, and he has just been an amazing player. I am just sitting here waiting for this dude to get a real quarterback. I'm hoping this isn't another Terry situation where you're just kind of sitting here waiting for this really amazing receiver to just get a quarterback who can throw him the football. And he has Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers likes him so far, that they've hooked up a lot in practice, but we need to see it happen on the field. I do have potential for Garrett Wilson, crack that top 10 ranking. He's very close right now, of course, but when it comes to Garrett Wilson, I have no concerns there. When it comes to Breece Hall getting you 50, 60, maybe even 70 catches, don't have a concern there. It's just everywhere else that I have the concern. Mike Williams, I don't know what he's going to look like this year. Like I said, turning 30 years old, coming off a significant injury. He's on, I believe, a 1-year, basically, prove-it contract. So he's got a lot to prove. Tyler Conklin is just a fine tight end. They have Jeremy Ruckert, too, who, they're maybe also waiting on to develop. Malachi Corley, like I said, really like him, but he's just a gadget weapon. And then the rest of the receiving crew is not really something that you're excited about. I mean, somehow, some way, Allen Lazard keeps getting, money every year, and he got that, sizable contract from the Jets just because he's a friend of Aaron Rodgers, even though he's an awful receiver. And then you had Xavier Gibson, who is just a return man, basically, and isn't a guy who's going to be seeing the field all that much, you'd hope, because Malachi Corley is going to be able to take that role as just to get the ball in his hands, handoffs, dump offs, punt return, kick return. Malachi Corley is just going to be better than that. So Xavier Gibson becomes pretty useless as a player. So where are you getting production from elsewhere? You're just hoping that Mike Williams can stay healthy and someone else can emerge for this team. I overall, though, just think in the receiving and tight end room, you're counting on Garrett Wilson, of course, but elsewhere it's just a bunch of guys. And I can't really say that Mike Williams I'm counting on to be, a 1,000-yard deep threat receiver like he was once upon a time. If you are and you're high on the receiving room because of Mike Williams and you think he's going to be fine coming off the injury and you think Malachi Corley's just the second coming of Debo, then I guess in the scenario where Malachi is just Debo 2.0, Mike Williams is fine, unaffected, and Jeremy Rutgert is a very serviceable tight end, and you maybe get a decent contribution from Allen Lazard as a number 4 receiver, sure, this could be an upper half of the league receiving room, but that's unrealistic to say because Malachi Corley and a lot of these other, gadgety type receivers, they all get the Debo comps. They're not going to be Debo. Debo is a different kind of player. Debo is just... he's a very unique player. That is a very rare thing to become, a gadget guy coming out of college who could just turn into, a 1,000-yard number 2 wide receiver. So that's not going to be a one-to-one comp that everyone wants to throw it out there because of the play style, but that's unrealistic to project that. And then it's also unreliable to believe that Mike Williams is going to come out here and be a great high-end number 2. So I have questions about the receiving core as well, none about Garrett Wilson, but everywhere else, it's fair to question where a lot of this production's going to be coming from. So with what I had to say about the weaponry, you must think that I was in the camp of saying the Jets should have taken Brock Bowers in the first round, and I'm here to say, no, I still think that they made the right draft pick. A lot of the Jets fans wanted Brock Bowers or wanted just somebody for Aaron Rodgers to throw the football to, and they just wanted Aaron Rodgers to get a first-round player for once, but, they felt like the tight end position was weak, and they wanted to just go and get a really great player in Brock Bowers, but I think Olu was the right pick for this team, and I think we start with Tyron Smith here, who is the team's big signing on the offensive line. Tyron Smith is still a really good player. Obviously, he's not at the elite level that he was many years ago, but the problem with Tyron Smith is this dude hasn't played a complete season since 2015. And let's just go back into the recent couple of years and talk about how many games he's missed. 2023, missed 4 games. Not that bad, but 2022, he only played in 4 games. 2021, played in 11 games. 2020, played in 2 games. He misses a lot of games, and he is, at this point now, going into age 34 this season. He's going to be horrifically unreliable, and this is a team that needs the offensive line to thrive and needs the pass blocking for Aaron Rodgers. And what do? You do? You draft the best pass blocker in the draft. You get Olu, who, you also have Morgan Moses on the other side, and Morgan Moses was also a nice pickup for them, a solid tackle, obviously not to the caliber of Tyron Smith, but Smith and Moses, when healthy, are going to make up one of the better tackle duos in the league. But hey, if any one of them go down, you could just plug Olu in right off the bat, and he should really come in and not see much of a drop-off when it comes to the pass blocking. Now, Morgan Moses shouldn't be that much of an injury concern. He doesn't miss all that many games, but Tyron Smith is a major concern. And also just for the future of this team, having a guy like Olu is going to be better long-term. Getting a potential franchise left tackle is going to be infinitely more valuable than getting a tight end. So just positional value, it's Olu. And yeah, I know Brock Bowers could slot in and be the day one starting tight end and play all 17 games, started them all, but is he going to have the same impact playing 17 games as a guy like Olu would have if Tyron Smith goes out with his typical 5, 6, 7, however many game injury, and you slot Olu in? Because once you get past Olu, you don't have anything on the tackle situation to slot someone else in. And if you get a backup replacement level left tackle out there, and what happens when Aaron Rodgers gets hit again? And, this team is definitely afraid of losing Aaron Rodgers, so you do everything you can to protect him. I know Olu probably isn't going to be a full season starter next year, but for the long-term significance of this team, Olu was the better pick. And for the short term even, you're counting on Tyron Smith to not play 17 games. He's not going to play 17. He is at best going to play like 13 games. And even then, that's just hopeful. He has not played more than 13 games since 2015. So he's going to miss a couple, and having Olu there to kind of fill in is going to be big for them. So that's just the tackle situation, and that's going to help make up a decent, base of this offensive line, that you have, two really nice tackles when they're out there, and Olu to come off the bench whenever you need him. But I do overall think it's a little crazy that some people have already jumped to saying, like, the Jets might have the best offensive line in the league. Like, they don't. That's a little crazy to say, to sit here and say that they have arguably the best offensive line in the league. I put them at 6, so it's not like I think they have a bad offensive line, but saying that they're top 3, like saying that they're up there in that echelon of offensive lines, I think that's just crazy to say. It's a strong line though, and as long as everything stays healthy with all these older guys, you're fine. But on the interior, you got Elijah Vera Tucker, who is going to be a nice younger piece of this line. Him and Joe Tippmann are going to be the two younger, more future pieces of this line that you're counting on a little bit more. John Simpson, being 26 years old, is kind of the piece that you're maybe most concerned about. I think he is the weakest guy on this offensive line, but if John Simpson is your weakest piece, you're not mad at that. He is not a complete liability out there. He's just a guy that will need some help every once in a while. Vera Tucker is still, hopefully getting better. Tippmann should take a jump up next year, as I think he was pretty decent last year. And I think this is going to overall be a nice offensive line. Like, I anticipate it being top 10, and I think it can maybe be top 5 if everything goes right, but you're going to need a jump from Tippmann. You're going to need health from Tyron Smith. And you're going to need, some of the other interior pieces, Vera Tucker to, maintain his level of play. You're going to need Simpson to not be a liability. It's a nice offensive line for sure, but it's far from the best that the league has to offer. And it is very much held together with two really old tackles, one of which is massively injury prone, and that massively injury prone guy is the best guy on this offensive line. So, even though I don't think having Olu step in for Tyron is going to be bad, objectively Olu's going to be worse than Tyron Smith whenever he does step in. So, you just have to worry about the potential injury concerns. And I've said this a lot about this offense. So, this offense as a whole, Aaron Rodgers coming off an injury, Breece Hall, he had a major injury in his rookie season, Mike Williams coming off a major injury, Tyron Smith is injury prone. This is a banged up older team with some young pieces like Breece Hall, but he has some injury history. Garrett Wilson, I'm not really concerned about. You have some young pieces on the offensive line, but it's really going to be a team that, man, health is definitely pending with this team. Like, they need to stay healthy. And I think it's very valid to be concerned that somebody's going to get hurt. Maybe it's not going to be Aaron Rodgers again, but Mike Williams, Tyron Smith, somebody's getting hurt on this team. And yes, every team does deal with injuries, but this team is at a higher injury risk, and I do think is severely lacking in depth. If Breece Hall goes down, you're looking at Braylon Allen. If Mike Williams goes down, Alan Lazard. If Tyron gets hurt, yeah, you go to Olu, but it's still objectively gonna be a downgrade. That's the only position where I'm like, okay, you have a contingency plan, you have a plan B if things go wrong. But everywhere else, it's like, man, if one injury strikes this team down, it could really derail this whole offense. Now let's go to the defensive side of the football, where the Jets are going to be in the running for the best defense in the league. This is going to be an unbelievably strong defense. So, we start with the defensive line. This is going to be their lowest ranking on the defensive side of the football. 8th in the league for the defensive line. When you got a guy like Quinnen Williams, you are going to get a big boost. It's going to be hard for you to have a truly bad defensive line when you have Quinnen Williams, who is just one of those difference-making game-changing, game-wrecking interior defensive lineman. He is in that very few elite tier of players. I think him, Chris Jones, and Dexter Lawrence are the three true elite difference makers on the interior. I have him coming in at third in the league. And if it wasn't for the fact that this interior basically lacked anything next to Quinnen Williams, this was going to be a defensive line that would have cracked my top 5. But a lot of people do have the Jets as among the 3 to 5 best defensive lines. I couldn't put them there just because of the lack of anybody else next to Quinnen Williams. And yes, you don't need great players next to Quinnen Williams, but they don't have anybody who I even believe is really a starting level player. I mean, Kinlaw is going to be potentially the guy next to him, but Kinlaw wasn't good last year. Solomon Thomas, not really anybody on this team that you're thrilled about next to Quinnen Williams, but that's where your weak spot is. And again, with this team, it's like, man, this team, when you look at the surface level, the starters, pretty strong. Absolutely, like, just no depth. Just nothing depth-wise. This is a team where it's like, man, a player gets injured, you are screwed. And if Quinnen Williams goes down, they are screwed on the interior, because you go from one of the best in the league to Javon Kinlaw and Solomon Thomas making up probably like the worst interior in the entire NFL. Like, they would be up there with a team like the Chargers for worst interior in the league without Quinnen Williams. So he does a lot to save this team on the interior. But we move on to the edge rushing group now. This was a team that acquired Hassan Reddick in, the offseason, and he's coming off an 11-sack season in Philadelphia, where he has been one of those rare, super speedy edge rushers that has really panned out. You do worry a little bit that he is going into his age 30 season, but he has had 4 straight double-digit sack seasons, and he is probably going to be a really quality player for them again. I wouldn't be surprised if he clears that double-digit sack mark again. He has kind of hovered around that top 15-ish range, I feel like, for the past couple of years. I have him coming in at 14th in the league, and I don't think, though, it's as massive of an upgrade from Bryce Huff. I don't have Bryce Huff ranked that much lower. Bryce Huff is still in my top 20. So these two teams, the Eagles and Jets, essentially swapped edge rushers. And I do think Hassan Reddick is better, but I don't think it's some monumental upgrade. I think this is going to be, if there is even a hint of regression from Reddick going into his age 30 season, and he's a guy who is very speed and athleticism oriented, this could be more of even a lateral movement where you're just kind of not upgrading, but you're not downgrading. It's just like you got another nice player. So Reddick is a nice find, and if he actually shows up to the team and doesn't keep skipping OTAs or whatever is going on with Hassan Reddick and all of his disputes with the team, if he shows up, he's going to be a great player. And then there's the guy that I'm really excited about for this defensive line, and that is Jermaine Johnson, who was a first-round pick. I was really big on Jermaine Johnson coming out in 2022. Thought it was crazy that he fell to the 26th overall pick. I was just like, man, the Jets got a steal. I love that draft from the Jets, and getting Jermaine Johnson was just an awesome acquisition for them. And he's come in, and as a second-year guy, got 7.5 sacks that I really feel like made a big jump up from his first season, where he didn't get into the action as much. But man, his second year was just really, really effective, and I have him cracking into that top 30 of edge rushers, and I do think he can slot in as a really high-end quality number 2. I don't know if he's going to ever hit that number 1 edge rush potential, but he's a really high-end number 2, and I think you could be looking at a duo on the edge of 2 guys getting you double-digit sacks. So I think Jermaine Johnson still has more room to grow and get better, and I'm curious to see what the dynamic of him and Hassan Reddick looks like on the outside. And if, maybe Hassan Reddick, drops down a little bit, Jermaine Johnson takes another step up, Jermaine Johnson could easily be the best edge rusher on this team. And then there's the only other player I really feel like that's worth talking about is Will McDonald, who was a very questionable first-round pick for the Jets. That was a first-round pick I really didn't like. I didn't think he was a need, was not necessary. He was an older player who I didn't even have a first-round grade on, and they took him at 15th. he had his moments last year, but ultimately needs to still prove that he can handle, more snaps. I do think he can be a really effective number 3, at least at this point in his career. Maybe he doesn't have the upside as a true number 1 or anything, and maybe he won't even be a high-end number 2, but I think he can be a quality number 2. And as a number 3, he's an awesome number 3 to have at this point. So the edge rush room is really strong. I feel like when you have Jermaine Johnson, Hassan Reddick, and Will McDonald, I think that those are, you got your number 1 in Reddick for now. You got your number 2 in Johnson, and Will McDonald's a high-end 3. So I think everything in the edge rush room makes sense and it clicks together. Quinnen Williams is a high-level, game-changing player. It's just the rest of the interior is what's going to hold this unit back. It's not a complete unit. It has, on a 4-man front, 3 of the 4 will wreck the game, potentially, at any given point. But that spot where Kinlaw or Solomon Thomas or whoever is going to be filling in that spot next to Quinnen Williams, that's the big hole of this interior. And that's just the big hole of this defense, really, as a whole. It's the only spot where I look at their defense and I'm like, yeah, that's probably the issue with that team. But everywhere else on this defense is great, and there's going to be more great things to talk about as we move on. Now, how about we talk about arguably the best linebacking room in the entire league? I put them at number 2, but they are tied with the 49ers with an A grade. I honestly think it's just a pick 'em. Like, who do you like more? Do you want the best linebacker in the league in Fred Warner, or do you want 2 of the 7 best linebackers in the league in Quincy Williams and CJ Mosley? Both of these guys are absolute monsters in the middle. CJ Mosley is just getting better and better, it feels like, and man, what a player he is, man. Like, he has just flown under the radar for so many years, and I think only just recently have people really caught on to how good CJ Mosley is and has been for a pretty long time now. Ever since he's really gotten to New York, it was pretty weird. He got to New York in 2019, basically got injured. 2020 didn't play. And then ever since stepping back on the field in 2021, he has just been awesome and gotten better and better and better. And he is now all the way up here as a top 5 linebacker in the league. I just can't say enough good things about how good CJ Mosley has been. He's a player that I have liked for a long time, going back to Baltimore, going back to 2014 in the draft. He was a player that I really wanted on my team, so he was just an awesome get for the Jets, and I think he has just finally gotten some of the respect that he deserves for being one of the best linebackers in the league, so I can give all credit there to him. And then next to him, what a find they have gotten in Quincy Williams, who isn't even that far behind his teammate in CJ Mosley for being one of the best linebackers in the league, and maybe even the best on his team. I know people that could prefer Quincy Williams, but man, he was a 3rd-round pick in Jacksonville and did absolutely nothing. Basically just got let go, and then again 2021 just comes onto the Jets, and man, he's amazing. Like, 2021, 2022, 2023 has seen a slow, steady increase in both of these linebackers in becoming 2 of the 7 best linebackers in the league and forming arguably the best duo in the league. It's not even enough that he's, Quincy Williams and Quinnen Williams are brothers, and, Quinnen, we obviously know how great he is, but again, just like CJ Mosley, Quincy is now starting to get respect among a lot of the guys in the league and a lot of the, more national media and everything of being one of the best guys in the league. So it's really great to see both of these guys continue to get better, continue to grow together, and get the respect that they deserve, because, this defense is great, obviously, but guys like Sauce Gardner get the majority of the attention. Quinnen Williams gets the majority of the attention. Now Hassan Reddick has come over, but man, the linebackers are the heart and soul of this defense. Most teams nowadays don't focus on the linebacker position nearly as much as you would maybe like to see. It's hard to get difference makers at the linebacker position. There aren't a lot of truly elite linebackers in the league, or even just truly great linebackers in the league. And, very rarely, though, a team will come around like the Jets, like the 49ers, and they put together a unit like this and a duo like this, and it's like, man, if you got 2 great linebackers, this is what they can do for your defense. Not any team in the league can do that, though. Only 2 teams in the league can say that they had that. I felt like the Ravens also last year had that with Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith, but Patrick Queen has moved on. So this is one of 2 teams in the league that will have a truly dominant linebacking duo, and it's going to be great to see these two continue to grow together. Maybe we could finally get Quincy Williams in a Pro Bowl, because despite making first team All-Pro last year, Duke couldn't get voted into the Pro Bowl because, people still fully aren't respecting just how good he is. At least he got the All-Pro nod, but he can't even get into the Pro Bowl, which is ridiculous. So, Pro Bowl is obviously a joke. We know all that, but keep respecting Quincy Williams and CJ Mosley. They are that good, and I think they'll continue to be that good this year and for multiple years on. They still have plenty of football left in them, and CJ Mosley could be on that like Demario Davis arc where he's just going to keep getting better and better. I don't anticipate maybe him playing elite level football in his mid-30s, but I think CJ Mosley's got 3 really high quality years left in him. Quincy Williams is 27. He might just be hitting his prime. So, man, this is going to be a great linebacking duo for a number of years. On to the secondary, and if you thought the linebackers, maybe there was an argument for them being number 1, I don't think there is an argument here. The Jets have the clear-cut number 1 secondary in the league, and if you're going to ask me why do the Jets have the best secondary in the league, well, I'm going to point to one of the best corners I have seen in a long time, and Sauce Gardner, who is going to get that true A+ grade, one of only a handful of players that we have given it out to. You can count on one hand the amount of players in this series have gotten an A+ grade so far, and Sauce Gardner is one of them. He is genuinely incredible. Off the top of my head, he's the best corner I have seen since maybe Richard Sherman, like prime Sherman. He's just blown any expectations out of the water, and this is a guy who was my favorite corner prospect that I had ever looked at. Him and Jalen Ramsey over the past decade are my 2 favorite corners coming out of college, and I even had Sauce Gardner higher than Jalen Ramsey, and man, he has been incredible. He has been in a league where it is harder to play defensive back and it's harder to play defense. You get called for pass interference on just about everything. You can't guard certain ways. It's so offense predicated, so offense it's slanted. It's really hard to be just a lockdown number 1 corner in today's NFL, and Sauce Gardner is arguably the only true shut down, you aren't throwing the football on this guy. There are guys who have had their moments. Surtain is up there. Jalen Johnson's up there. Those are the only other 2 guys that I feel like have played shutdown football in the past year, or in Surtain's case, a year or 2. But, man, if you need someone to shut down a receiver, Sauce Gardner is the guy. And I know it's an easy comparison to make because he's a former Jet as well, but, man, dare I say Darrelle Revis levels of shutdown, not prime Revis with that graphic that everyone talks about where he held everyone to under 50 yards or whatever the case is in that one season, but not that level. But he's the best defensive player they have had since probably Darrelle Revis, and he's maybe the best corner I have seen since Revis. I said Sherman, but I mean different corners, a zone corner who, was high on getting interceptions, and, a really smart player, whereas Sauce is just a lock up shut down corner. So I guess I'll say more so in the archetype of a shut down true corner. He's the best that I have seen in over a decade. He is playing at an unbelievable level, and if you think there is a debate of who the best corner in the league is, you are crazy. If you think Sauce Gardner is for some reason overrated, you are crazy. I don't care. You could show me one clip where he got beat one time, and everyone just wants to try to tear Sauce Gardner down because he's got a personality and he's confident and he's this and he's that. It's a little infuriating how social media handles certain players that they don't like and they try to knock them down. You can't knock Sauce Gardner down. He is the best in the league. He is the best. He's one of the best overall players in the entire league. And if that alone was your secondary, you just had Sauce Gardner, you'd still probably be an upper half of the league secondary just because you could take a number 1 receiver out of the game at any given point. But you don't have just Sauce Gardner. You have DJ Reed, who is going to slot in as maybe the best number 2 corner in the league right now. I mean, in terms of guys who are the number 2 corners on their team, how many can you really say are better than DJ Reed? Maybe nobody. And DJ Reed is going to come in as a certified top 20 corner in the NFL, and he has been also amazing, and he has formed a elite level duo with Sauce Gardner. And it doesn't really even stop there, because Michael Carter is also a really nice player as well, a very quality number 3 corner, and someone who's going to be playing in the nickel for them once again this season. And man, he's pretty nice as well. I have him as, one of the 32 best corners in the league overall, and one of the best nickel corners in the league. So, that's a 1-2-3 punch that's going to be really difficult to overcome. Michael Carter is going into his contract season, so we'll see, a guy who's a former 5th round pick, what kind of money he's going to be getting. It's probably going to be hard to retain him, because he's probably going to get a big payday somewhere else. I guess if you want to have a little bit of a concern, the safety duo isn't nearly as exciting as the cornerbacks that you got out there, but you have Chuck Clark at the safety room, who is coming over from Baltimore. He spent 6 years there and had really been, utilized pretty well once, Mike McDonald came in, and, he was playing closer to line of scrimmage, racked up over 100 tackles last year, and I think it's a really nice safety that you can play closer to the line of scrimmage, and he's going to slot in very well for this defense. The only concern I guess you would have about this secondary is kind of the back end up top guy in Tony Adams. He is definitely a guy who is going to have his losses. He is the maybe most beatable guy you have in that secondary. He had 3 interceptions last year, but did get beat quite a bit of times. And, he is still just 25 years old going into his 3rd season, so you're hoping that he could take a bit of a step up, and I think that's very possible. And if he's your liability out there and he can at least take maybe a little bit of a step up to be a decent player, I think you're pretty happy with that. You're still maybe looking for a safety that can maybe be a little bit more reliable for them, and they brought in Chuck Clark to maybe help out with some of that veteran leadership and everything back there. But overall, you got the best corner in the league, you got the best cornerback room in the league, and when you have a legitimate number 1 corner, a high-end number 2, a quality nickel, and Chuck Clark's a fine player. Like, if he's your 4th best DB, you're pretty happy with that. I mean, yes, this is going to be the best secondary in the league. It's going to be hard to pass on this team. You can line these guys up straight up man coverage across the board. And how are you going to pass on this team if you got DJ Reed, Sauce Gardner, Michael Carter, man coverage, you got CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams there, and you could have Chuck Clark playing a little bit more down. You have good edge rush. You have an interior presence who can dominate. This defense has somebody at every position who can be effective in some form or way. And it's going to have a challenge for the best defense in the league. If the Jets are going to succeed this year, it's going to be because of the defense, obviously. This is a crazy, crazy good defense. So when it comes to the kickers and punters, the special teams in that department should be pretty good as well. Thomas Morstead has continued to be one of the best punters in the league at his older age, and Greg Zuerlein's a very solid kicker. I have him in that average range, and he's very middle of the pack. He's been pretty nice in certain seasons, and he's been around for a long time as well. So the kickers and punters should help this team out quite a bit, and I do think there is potential with Malachi Corley in the return game. That's kind of where the positives stop, because I do think this is a team that we'll eventually get into in the next part, where I determine their overall success is a team lacking depth, so I think that could hurt them in the special teams department in terms of kick coverage and everything else. But kicker, punter, return man, I think all of that is good enough to give this team a top 10 grade in the special teams, but it really stops there. The depth of this team is holding it back from being, maybe a top 5 special teams in the league. So combined with the ranking that I have the Jets not being a top 10 team and the record that I have picked out for them, having them win 9 games this season, I do have an explanation behind that. And firstly, I will say winning 9 games in the AFC is different than the NFC. For example, going back to the last 2 episodes, the Packers and Cowboys, I have them ranked lower than the Jets, but I have them winning 10 games. I even have a team like the Falcons all the way down at 17, winning 9 games. Winning 9 games or 10 games in the NFC is different. It's harder to win the AFC. Winning 9 games in the NFC South for the Falcons is going to be a lot easier than winning 9 games in the AFC East for the Jets. So, that's going to play into things. It's objectively going to be a tougher road for the Jets. And, just in terms of their overall team, I think that there's some serious concerns. Last year, the Jets were among the top 2 teams in the league when it came to having the oldest roster. Them and the Saints were, I looked at multiple places. Them and the Saints were the only 2 teams that have the average age of their roster 27 plus. And this is a team that's now another year older with a lot of their key players. And with the guys that they brought in, just let's name the guys they brought in. Mike Williams, Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses, Chuck Clark, and, they also brought in Hassan Reddick. All those guys are above the age of 27. All those guys are about to be 30 or are north of 30. So the roster is even older in a lot of key positions. Maybe the average age is going to be a bit younger because of the young guys that they have had to bring in to kind of fill out the roster, cheaper undrafted rookies, late round draft picks. But in terms of the key players and the starters of this team, it's an even older roster. And I talked a lot about the depth of this team being bad. This is a team that if you lose one of your key players, it's going to be rough. A lot of teams have decent depth or have, not significant drop-offs, or at least have playable backups. And for the Jets, every team pending health could be good. Every team, though, also sustains a lot of injuries. But I think this is the team in the NFL that is the most dependent to stay healthy. No team is going to suffer from injuries more than the Jets this year. And we could push Aaron Rodgers to the side. It has nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers, because Tyrod Taylor is one of the best backups that they have. But Breece Hall goes down, you're going to a rookie Braylon Allen. A receiver goes down, Alan Lazard. A lineman goes down. Aside from Olu, you have nothing else in the O-line. A defensive line, if Quinnen Williams, oh my goodness, if Quinnen Williams misses a game, you have arguably the worst interior defensive line. The two linebackers are great, but you don't have much there. One of the secondary members goes down. You don't have anything there. Who are the backups on this team that are going to objectively going to need to step in? No team goes through the season unscathed. And this is maybe the team that has among the worst depth in the entire NFL. And it's arguably the oldest roster in the NFL. I don't have the statistics going into this year, but this is a team where the core group is only older, so it's probably going to be an older roster this year. This might be the oldest starting core team in the league. So an old team with bad depth and a quarterback coming off an Achilles injury and a coaching staff that I just don't buy into. I have no questions about their defense, but I have a lot of questions about everything else. The culture of this team, the leadership of Saleh, the culture of Saleh, the ability on the offensive side of the football to not just be so Aaron Rodgers dependent, because you have Nathaniel Hackett who can't do much without Aaron Rodgers. So it's a rough team in that regard. So I don't think it's going to be a surprise if this team maybe underperforms relative to their high-end roster talent. It's a very top-heavy team. But getting into, the superlatives and everything, I will have Breece Hall as the offensive MVP. You don't know what you can count on from Aaron Rodgers, but from the last two seasons, you can count on Breece Hall. As long as he is on the field, he is going to produce. On the defensive side of the football, Sauce Gardner is going to be there to take away every number one receiver in the NFL that he matches up against. So it's no surprise he's going to be the defensive MVP. Breakouts were hard for this team because it's an old team and there's not going to be a lot of breakout candidates. But, I'm going with one of the few young players that they do have on this team, and that's Joe Tippmann, to take a step up at the center position. And on defense, I do think Jermaine Johnson is the guy that maybe has the best chance to take a step up in terms of their young core starters. Johnson had a really impressive year last year, and I think he can continue to build upon that. And if there's going to be a player to keep your eye on, I do think Malachi Corley is maybe that guy to be the weapon on this offense and special teams. I think he can be an effective return man. I think he can be a guy, like I said, in that Randall Cobb role. Lines up in the backfield, lines up out wide, and you throw some screens out to him. Jet sweeps, pop passes, all these manufactured touches to make the offense a little bit easier and to flow a little bit better. So those are the superlatives I gave out, and let me know what you think of this Jets team. I know I feel like I'm on the unpopular side of this, and, me not having the Jets as a top 10 team may be a little bit, controversial or may not make people happy, but I hope I, articulated the reasons why pretty well, and, going over their lack of depth in their old roster with the coaching questions and injured quarterback. I think there's a lot of reason to be concerned. So let me know what you all think. Like, comment, and subscribe, as all that stuff is very helpful as I continue to get these videos out. And I will see you guys all in the next one.